When we started going to group meetings together, you were one of the first people I met. You were instrumental in my recovery. It's tough when you're strong because nobody sees you hurting.
You're three people. You're the person that others see you as, you're the person you see yourself as, and then there's the person you really are.
It's the way you project yourself. It's your image. It's being squared away.
If you could, would you go back?
I would love to. I got beat up by the system. It took 53 weeks to get to grand jury. I had a murder indictment hanging over my head for 53 weeks for doing my job. Absolutely ripped me apart. I felt so betrayed.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Well, you know, it's funny because I tell people all the time, you're one person and people remember your face. You can go to a scene, let's just say it's a domestic and there's a whole family there and there's 10 people in a house or whatever it is. There's 10 different faces. You're the cop that showed up. You're one face. So they always remember your face. One of the things I do, like I'm an instructor in the Bergen County Police Academy. I've been doing it for about 15 years or so. Go up to 2 classes a year. I used to teach motor vehicle stops, crimes in progress, snipers, ambushes, assaults, a whole bunch of stuff like that. And I was a PT instructor, so I used to go running with the academy class all the time. There's 100 kids in each class. 2 classes a year, it's 200 kids, 15 years. You're talking a lot of, and they all have their head shaved, so I don't remember any of them. I'd be like down the shore or something like that. I was walking across the beach one day and I hear, "Hey, Lieutenant." I'm like, kid's like, "You remember me?" Now he's got longer hair. I didn't remember when you the academy, but you're that one face. Now when I go up to the academy, I go up twice a year. I'm really not that active in there anymore. I was out at a local establishment last night, and a guy walks in and he's looking at me, and he's got a shaved head, short crew cut type. He goes, "You look real familiar." What I do at the academy is I go up the night of motor vehicle stops. Me and the Rutherford officer that I was telling you that was standing on the other side of the car at the time of my incident, we were teaching motor vehicle stops together for years. So when I go up to the class now, every year, we set aside about an hour and we talk to all the recruits about what it's like to be involved in a shooting, what to expect.
That was the class that was missing in my academy.
Yeah.
That's how we change things. Because these new officers coming in, they got to deal with a bunch of different other issues than you and I had to deal with. But eventually that stuff's not going away.
Yeah.
There's going to be all sorts of different things and it's going to be escalated. So we have to change that paradigm.
The feeling that I got when you're talking about what it's like to be involved in a shooting and to see their eyes, I mean, they're just riveted on you. You know, they're sitting on the edge of the seat listening to, you know, when you're in the academy, it's like, oh, here comes another instructor. You know, what's he going to talk about this time? They were all just like riveted on me. After we talked about the shooting and everything, a lot of them just come up and thank you. You know, and that, again, to me, we're talking about proud moments. That's a proud moment. Like I was saying, I was out last night and a guy comes in and he says to me, he goes, "You look real familiar." So I said, "Yeah, well," tell him who I am and everything. He goes, "Weren't you a Lyndhurst cop?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm a West New York cop. I went to Bergen County Police Academy." He goes, "You told us a story about your shooting." He goes, "I just want to thank you." He goes, "I actually sat there and took notes about it." And he goes, "I still have those notes." And he goes, "I refer to them all the time." And one of the things that I try to get across to him is, in this business, complacency kills. My incident was 2:28 on a Tuesday morning. That's when some cops like to bed down, take a load off for a little while, catch up on reports, but you never know when things are going to happen. Like I tell them all the time, you'll go to that same alarm 10, 20 times a month. You know, you get like that ABC corner store or whatever it is, you know, and
it's that one
and
time.
the alarm goes off and they're like, "Oh, here's that alarm again." You know, you always go like clockwork. You go pull on the door, check the windows. It's all secure. The one time you go and your complacency's down, that's the time that place is going to be getting robbed.
But do you understand that you had to go through this certain amount of suffering in your life, in your shooting? You could have sat there. You had every right to sit there and go, "Oh man, my life's destroyed. It's ruined." but you were able to take that suffering and turn it into some sort of positive, which is what this suffering podcast is all about. It's about taking that suffering in, learning from it, rearranging it somehow, and giving it back out to the world in some sort of positive light, and showing that you don't have to take this as a negative incident. You can grow from this stuff.
But, it's all about learning from someone else, generally someone else that's been through it, taking that information and making it your own.
Right.
I tell people all the time, what works for you may not work for me, but a portion of what worked for you may work for me.
Your recovery process, you're obviously in recovery. You're doing quite well. What's the biggest roadblock to your recovery now?
Today's climate, the way that they're treating police officers. If I ever hear of a police involved shooting, officer involved shooting, that just reverts me back to the day. You just start thinking, you start thinking about your incident, and like I said, it's a new normal. It's never ending. You try to put up a strong front, and like I said, I'm a quote guy, and one of the quotes were, "It's tough when you're strong because nobody sees you hurting."
Ah, yes.
Nobody knows what's going. You may put on the bravest front. People say that to me all the time.
You're three people. You're the person that others see you as, you're the person you see yourself as, and then there's the person you really are.
Yep.
So when you go behind that veil and nobody else is seeing you and you let loose, it's not what you always think it is.
People always used to say to me all the time, "Oh, I was so afraid of you when you were a cop. You're like an imposing, I'm 5'9", 185 pounds. How am I imposing?" It's the way you project yourself. It's your image. It's being squared away, looking neat in your uniform, making sure your shit is shined. It's the way you project yourself. So I guess I always projected myself as, I don't want to say standoffish, but more unapproachable. You can approach me anytime you want. I don't want too many people approaching me. So you put up that facade where, like, you go to ShopRite.
My wife tells me I'm unapproachable all the time.
You go to ShopRite and, they know you're a cop, and they're like, "Officer, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Yeah, I'm in at 3:00. Call me at 3:00. And listen, I'm willing to help anybody out, but once you put up that facade or that wall around you, I guess it's just cop mentality. I tell people all the time, they're like, "Oh, I was afraid to talk to you." And I could be the nicest guy in the world. I could be the biggest dick in the world too, but come talk to me. My daughter, when she started dating, the boys wouldn't come over the house because they were all afraid of me.
Well, isn't that the point?
That was exactly the point.
Exactly.
And my daughter used to get so mad at me. "Daddy, no boys are coming over here to see me." I said, Good, go do your homework.
I always said if I ever had a daughter, thankfully I never had a daughter, I'd rub Crisco all over her face and make her the ugliest person possible just so the boys would stay away.
I had my daughter had braces and glasses. I tried to keep her as ugly for as long as I can.
Keep feeding her McDonald's.
Have another bite.
So if I was a young person getting into law enforcement now, what do you think a best piece of advice to give them would be?
Become a fireman.
Become a firemen talk to each other, police talk about each other. But so Mike and I, just give you a little background. Mike and I are in group therapy together. Everybody talks about the brotherhood that is police. I'm going to lift the veil on that. There is no brotherhood in police, because police, all they do is, they're like crabs in a barrel. When one crab tries to get out, the others pull him back down. And that's not all cops. That's there's a small portion of them. But with the group therapy, we're all police officers. To me, that's real police brotherhood.
Yeah.
Because we're looking out for each other. You can say anything to each other, and it's going to be kept nice and close. And you're going to get some answers that you don't want.
Yeah. Well, you have to have thick skin.
Yes,
you have to have thick skin to be in this business. Like you said, between a dark humor and as much as I don't want to say, there's a lot of backstabbing that goes on in this business.
It's a competitive job market, so
especially with promotions and stuff like that. One of the old sayings was, "When you see a man in blue, fuck him before he fucks you."
Well, whenever somebody gets stripes, I always say, "How much were your knee pads?"
Yeah, exactly. Did you take those stripes off of your knee pads?
Yeah. The advice I give people, because people will from time to time come up to me and say, "Hey, I think my son's looking to become a cop." The one piece of advice I give them is, you're going to train your body to get through the academy. But you got to train your mind. You have to become mentally strong. And some people aren't cut out to have that mental strength. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's too late now.
I would never steer anybody away from law enforcement. I loved it. I mean, I loved every minute of it. Like I said, I was proud just to put the uniform on. I took 8 sick days in 20 years. I was one of the dedicated guys. I brought, we were issued our portable radios. I brought my portable radio home every night and always had it near me. And if I heard something going off or an officer needs something, I'd jump in my car, grab my gun, grab my vest. I'd go out.
If you could, would you go back?
I would love to. My whole thing is, it's not only the incident itself that really got to me. One of the things that bothers me most is I got beat up by the system. Like I said, it was a carjacked vehicle. Came out
post-shooting.
Post-shooting.
Yeah.
The whole investigation of it.
Right. I know you had some issues with getting your name released into the press.
Yeah, well, that's another whole issue.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast. That was an awful thing, man.
Yeah. Case law now too.
Right.
I mean, we could touch on that if you want to. I got no problem with it. But
man.
the investigation into it was, like I said, carjacked vehicle came at me at 90 miles an hour. If he hit me, he would have killed me right there. Stolen gun in the car. He had ski masks in the car. They were trying to break into cars. He was high on weed and bath salts. Everybody coming up to me at the scene. It's a great shoot. You got nothing to worry about. You did it. You're a hero. And hero I don't like either because someone died. I don't like to be called a hero. I was doing my job.
That's one of those things almost like when you're going through retirement and say, oh, don't worry about it. It was a good shoot. You're a shoo-in for retirement. People can tell you that. They told it to me all the time. But until you get that, go in front of that board and say that you are, you never, ever believe it. So they could tell you a good shoot. Yeah. It's a good shoot all day. But
well, they told me it was a good shoot, but we have to present it to grand jury. Well, if it was a good shoot. Needless to say, the state trooper wound up firing that night, so the attorney general's office took over the investigation. The shooting happened early morning, September 16th. The 17th, talked to our attorney. I think we went and met with our attorney, PBA attorney.
So that's something people don't realize about police. When you're involved in a shooting, and people think that police out there getting involved in shootings all the time because they watch too much TV, the minute you get into a shooting, you got to get an attorney. Yeah. Because otherwise you're going to end up in jail.
Yeah, no kidding.
And now with
it's no joke.
The current climate, and this is another thing I would tell somebody looking to become an officer. The current climate is, oh, you got to shoot him in the leg. I actually had somebody tell me that. Why can't they shoot him in the leg?
Shoot him in the hand.
And I had to educate them to say, if I have the forethought and the ability to shoot somebody in the leg, I'm going to jail.
Yeah.
Because that means I shouldn't have been shooting them.
Yep. Generally, you're taught that your bullet is going where your eyes are going. And like I said, I was staring this guy right in the face. So that's where my bullet went. But just referring back to the investigation, after everybody told me it was a good shoot, we went, talked to our attorney. The next day we had to go to state police, give our statement. And then they said, okay, we'll be in touch with you. It took 53 weeks to get to grand jury. I had a murder indictment hanging over my head for 53 weeks for doing my job. Absolutely ripped me apart. I felt so betrayed by I don't even want to call it a business, but I felt so betrayed by the profession that I chose and the profession that I loved and the profession that I put my life on the line for every day, not just that night, every day. It took 53 weeks to get to grand jury, and we had no contact with the Attorney General's office whatsoever.
That's how broken
they don't call you and tell you, here's what's going on. Now you start second guessing yourself. Did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong in my statement? The attorneys, they're like, no, you did good. You're attorney. Call your attorney. Oh, you did good. Don't worry about it. You got nothing to worry about. Well, if I got nothing to worry about, what's taking so long? I lost 20 pounds in a year from the stress.
So now you're dealing with the PTSD and you're dealing with this stress going through grand jury indictment. Yeah. And then once that's over, then you're dealing with the stress of retirement.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole nother ball of wax right there.
So think about all that stuff encompassing you. Was there ever a time that you sat down, and I know this is going to be hard for you to say, that you sat down and said, this is it, man. I can't go on anymore.
Yeah. It was during the course of the Attorney General's investigation. And there were a lot of different things too. Like I lived right in Lyndhurst. The night of the shooting, my kids were still in school. The night of the shooting, my then wife, I called her right after because I know Lyndhurst is a small town and the Grapevine is is just terrible. I always know that they teach you in the police academy, if you're ever involved in a shooting, you have to go to the hospital that night. So I figured someone was going to call my family and say, Mike's been involved in a shooting and he's in the hospital.
That's why I had to call I said it in, I don't know if you listened to my shooting episode. It's the first thing I had to grab somebody's phone because my phone was in the car. I never carried my phone with me at that time. And yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. Somebody's going to call my wife and say there was a shooting. Kevin's going to the hospital. Yeah. Holy shit. How do you do that?
So I called her. I think it was like 7 minutes after the incident. So I called the house phone. She answers the house phone. I said, listen, I just want to let you know I was involved in a shooting. I'm okay. She said, I'll be right up there. I said, no, there's no reason for you to come up here. She calls her sister who lives on our block. All of a sudden I had a family gathering at the scene. Get out of here. I said, do me a favor. Go home and tell the kids. I said, go home and tell the kids. They know I was working last night. They're going to go to school today. And they're going to know there was a police-involved shooting last night because it's all over town already. And they're going to see that I'm not home. Tell them, yes, I was involved. I'm okay. We're just going through the investigation. Tell them whatever you want. So she winds up leaving. They take us up to the hospital. We go back to the scene. We have our own command post. So I'm sitting in the most eerie thing. I'm sitting in the command post. Now I'm in civilian clothes because they took our uniforms from us there, for all the evidence of the tire burn on the uniform and all that. So I'm in my civilian clothes and I'm just sitting there. News helicopters overhead. News reporters over here. I see like Tracy Strahan from like Channel 4 News or whatever. Like, that's Tracy Strahan, This is pretty. And then it hit me. I'm like, they were all here for what I did. They're here for me. I want to go outside and like start giving interviews, like, because you're going to get the story wrong. Every news feed gets a story wrong. Here's what actually happened. That's one thing that bothered me is all the I don't want to say false allegations, just the misled stories that were out there about the shooting. They made us seem like some rogue cops that just started firing at people for no reason. There was a reason behind it.
Because that's where the story is.
Exactly. That's how the media spins it.
You've used your suffering in such a positive way. And I know it wasn't positive when you first started out, but it sounds like you're really on the right track now. It sounds like your head's a little bit clearer. You're giving back to others. You're learning. You're remembering the good things about being a police officer, which I'm sure during the darkest of times, they weren't there.
No, absolutely not.
So that's part of that recovery process. And that's part of that stuff where I wanted to have you in today. So what's next for you?
Hopefully tomorrow.
Tomorrow? The one day at a
I
time?
live it day by day.
That's good. If you had a crystal ball and you're able to look into the future 10, 20 years, do you think you're still going to be telling this story?
I hope to be.
Yeah.
If I could help one person out, it's all worth it to me.
Well, that's the message right there. Yeah. So in conclusion, I just want to throw out a couple different numbers because I think that this is important. There's an organization that helped me. It benefited me more than I can ever tell them. And it's Cop to Cop. Cop to Cop is for law enforcement officers. And the number is 1-866-COP-2-COP or 267-2267. They're a wonderful organization. You're speaking to people who are familiar, or you're speaking to retired police officers. They know it. You're not alone. You're never alone. The second, I'd like to give, it's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that's 1-800-273-8255. So let's talk about all the stuff that we learned today. If you're able to overcome that trauma and that adversity, you can use your newfound strength to build a better you. You are definitely not alone. If you ever have a problem, just reach out to me on social media. I'll call you. Leave me your phone number. But most importantly, and I think this is what I get from you, is you got to pay it forward. You got to pay it forward. Mike, I can't thank you enough for being here. You're my brother. You're my friend.
Kev, before we go, I just want to say thank you for this podcast. But more importantly, thank you for being the person you are. When we started going to group meetings together, you were one of the first people I met. You were instrumental in my recovery. I knew you've been through it before. And that's the hardest thing. People come up to you all the time and say, I know what you're going through. You don't know what I'm going through. Unless you've been through that, you don't know what I'm going through. You were one of the people that I had to lean on back then, and I truly appreciate it. One other thing I want to get out there, and I get nothing out of this. There's a book out there. It's called Shots Fired. The author's name is Joe Laughlin. He's a retired deputy chief, I believe, in Portland, Maine. He interviews all cops that goes through, just like we're doing now, goes through their shooting incident, and he gets their feelings about, what it's like to be involved in it and everything else. Could you get some crazy thoughts in your head when you go through these things? And I was wondering, am I crazy? Why am I thinking like this? What's making me think like this? When you read that book, and like I said, I get nothing out of it, you start seeing that other people are feeling the same way you are. And it all starts coming together. I always said, I believe that book should be in every police academy. I think every recruit should read that book, just in case they get involved in a shooting.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to that book in our show notes. If I get sued, so be it.
Listen, I know the guy who wrote it. I was so impressed by the book. I looked up the author of it. I found out where he was working and everything else. I actually called him.
What's his name?
Joe Laughlin.
Joe Laughlin?
Loughlin.
Good Irishman. I like that.
I actually got on the phone with him. I could give you his phone number and everything. Fantastic guy. Well, and again, like I said, there are certain people I have to thank. You're one of the people I have to thank. Joe Laughlin for his book. My chief of police, Chief O'Connor, at the time of the incident, was a phone call away.
I always say, don't thank me, pay it forward. And that's going to bring us to the end of the Suffering Podcast. Check us out on social media. Thank you, Mike Failace, for coming in here today, telling your story. I know it was difficult for you. You did an awesome job. And I know you don't like this word, but you're a hero to me, and you're a hero to the other officers around the country. So everybody, have a great time. Pay it forward. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening to the Suffering Podcast. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, OnlyFans. Follow me at Realkevindonaldson. Of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. And we're going to see you on the next episode.